What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Base Damage, and even though we've already talked a lot about Alice, I got a little bit more for you, but this is not focusing on the bullshit from Anniversary. This is going to be focused on the Alice cards from Set 1 and Set 2 of Alicization. And there's a couple cards in here I chose specifically because of price. I'm not running the combos from the level 1 and the level 3 combos from Set 1. The level 1 Alice in here still does some good stuff, and obviously I'm going to talk about the combos from that. But the level 1 from the first set has a very good has a couple very good effects, but it's an on reverse top check, add a Fluctlight to hand, as well as it gets an Aaron Yeager type effect, which is honestly pretty cool. That can bounce back to hand if it gets frontaled, which is very nice. I'm not going to discount that as a potential option because the price for that isn't like ridiculous. But the level 3 is a big difference. This is vastly cheaper. This one's only like $1 as opposed to the level 3 from Volume 2, which still has its pros and cons. It is the better climax combo by far. But when you show both of the double rares, like on screen right now, the price point is a big thing. I could not afford the copies of that level 3. Whereas you can kind of pick up the level 1s now because they're down to like $5 or so. But let's get into the deck profile itself, and I'll go over each of the cards as well. There are pros and cons to this deck, and we will go over that at the end of the video as well. So let's jump right into it. Obviously, we got every card in here is Alice in some way, shape, or form. Even though this one has Asuna, there is still Alice for this first one, this level 3 to 9k joint battle, Asuna and Alice. If your waiting room has 2 or less climaxes, it gets minus a level in hand. If you have 2 or more other Fluctlight characters, it gets 1500 power and character encore. Specifically Fluctlight encore, but the entire deck is Fluctlight, whatever. And when this is placed on stage from hand, look up to X cards from the top of your deck. Choose up to 1 card from amongst them, put it into your hand, put the rest into your waiting room. X is equal to the number of Fluctlight characters you have. You can use this to dig for the climax, basically at level 3. Or if if you're able to summon this early at level 2 or something like that, and you want to be able to play the level 1 combo more, you can just dig for the climaxes. And that's typically what it's used for. No healing, sadly, even though it's an early play, but we're going to continue on. 4 copies of that, by the way. 2 copies of Female Childhood Friend, and this one was a little bit of a tough sell to put in the deck, but I wanted a little bit more in the realm of digging to try to get for the climax combo, as well as a little bit of an off finisher, just in case you weren't able to get to the climax. But this is from the trial deck, and it's about like $7 or $8 a piece, so you can replace this with some other cards from the 2 sets, just going ahead and saying that now. But it's a 3/2/10k on play. Look at cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of Fluctlight characters you have, and you choose any card amongst them, add it to your hand. When this card attacks, you can pay 1 and discard 1 card. It gets 2k power for the turn, and on reverse of the battle opponent, burn them for 1. Like I said, a little bit extra burn. But speaking of burn, we have burn aplenty with the level 3 combo, the 3/2/10k Priestess of Light Alice. The climax combo itself is on attack if you have New World, which is this particular spin trigger right here, which is really nice art there too. If you have the climax in play, you get to burn for 1, just straight up. Then, this isn't climax combo related, but just in general, the turn this card is placed on stage from hand, 1 time per turn. When damage dealt by this card is cancelled, you may put the top card of your deck into your waiting room. Deal X damage to your opponent. X is equal to the level of that card plus 1. People commonly refer to this as a Musashi effect, referencing a level 3 back from Kantai Collection specifically. But it is just very cool, and you're really able to push for a decent little bit of damage with this. The burn effect, the cancel burn effect, can proc on either its damage when you're swinging with the climax, typically for 3, and it can also proc on the burn 1, just stating. So you got a lot of chances to try to deal damage to your opponent between this and the other level 3. Just being able to potentially on reverse burn is still really cool. Then we have 3 copies of the Osmanthus Knight Alice Synthesis 30. The 2/8k. This is also from the trial deck, but it's very cheap. It can't side attack, but when it attacks, it gets 1000 power times the number of other Fluctlight characters you have, meaning she can get up to 12k, even just at level 2, which is really nice. 1 copy of this particular 2/17k Memories of a Younger Sister Alice. When this card becomes reversed in battle, if the level of this card's battle opponent is higher than your opponent's level, you may put that card into your opponent's memory. Anti-change memory kick isn't the best in the world, but there's no like Alice anti-change backup. You would have to put in like Agile or Yu-Gi-Oh or something like that. I wanted to keep this theme just to Alice, so I decided to put the reverser in no matter what, just because. That is it for the 2s. Getting to the level 1s, we have Seeking Ice Alice. It's a 1/6K. When that attacks, you get, and if you have 2 or more other Fluct-like characters, she gains an extra 2k power for the turn. This is also from the trial deck, by the way. And a character encore. Really simple. Can get up to 8k, and with your other buffs, she can actually get closer to like 10k when you drop the climax down, which is pretty sizable for any level 1 to be able to get over stuff. So, 2 copies of this particular Gallant Knight Alice. It's a 1/1. It is a 2k backup, and when you use this card's backup, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your waiting room. Now, you can just straight up go 4 copies with this, with the one I'm about to say for the level 1, because this does have a crit trigger, and that is very significant. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the other backup. It's just a straight up free 2k backup, but it doesn't have the crit trigger. I'll explain my reasoning for that in a second here, but it's Cooking with the Sacred Arts Alice. So the level 1 combo is Where the Soul is Alice from the Volume 2 set. It is a 1/0/35, but it gains 500 power for each of your other Fluct-like characters, meaning you typically want to have a full board and she'll be at 5/5. When this card attacks, if Our Memories Are Here, which is the other 1k1 spin trigger, it's really cool. If it is in play, put up to 1 card from the top of your deck into your stock. It is optional, but you don't get to see what it is. And you reveal the top card of your deck afterwards. If that card has a crit trigger icon, you may put that into your hand. So you can add, obviously because of that effect, you can add this particular backup to hand, but you can add any of the level 2s or 3s to hand if you trigger that. Now, the interesting thing, it only says if that card has a crit trigger icon. The funniest shit for this is you can add any of the spin trigger climaxes because they all have crit triggers. You can just straight up add the climaxes to hand, but here's the cool option with that. You top check, it says if that card has a trigger, you may put it into your hand. So it's completely and totally optional. There's some other cool effects in here in the level 0 lineup that work off of these the spin triggers and everything. So you can purposely just go, hey, I see this as a climax. Do I want to add it to hand for next turn for trying to push for some damage? Like maybe if you see, like if you're about to be pushed to level 3 or something and you see that it's a New World for the level 3, you can add that to your hand and you guaranteed have your climax combo the next turn. But you can also just go, I'm going to put it back on top of the deck, and then I know that I'm going to be able to spin and get a really aggravating card off the opponent's side of the field, whether that be like an assist or a card that they standbyed in or something. The thing of spin triggers with this deck is kind of crazy since it's 8 spin triggers. They may not consistently be able to get into your hand normally, but this can mitigate that a little bit if you want to add them to hand or get the spins going off and give your opponent a little bit of a hard time with that. And I already talked about the other level 1 backup. An argument could be made to drop this particular one altogether, but because of the downside of this one, when you use the backup, you have to mill the top 3 cards of your deck. There may be situations where you don't want to mill the top 3 cards of your deck. It's forced. You have to do it. So you may not want to. So I kind of did a 2-2 split, but an argument could be made to just run 4 of this because you want to be able to add them to hand off this Alice. So that is to each their own. You do what you want to on that one. And now let's get into the level 0s to round out. We have this 00500 Splitting Sound of the Sword Alice. Just a straight up global 500 for all of your Fluct-like characters. This is also key for another level 0. This particular one has to be on the field for the other level 0 to get a buff. Or to give out a buff, I should say. So 4 copies of this I feel is mandatory. At the beginning of your climax phase, if you have 2 or more other Fluct-like characters, you may pay the cost, which is you can put a marker underneath this to your waiting room, and if you do, choose one of your opponent's characters, return it to their hand. And when your character's trigger check reveals a spin trigger and there are no markers underneath this card, you may look at the top card of your deck, and if you do, put that card face down underneath this card as a marker. What this essentially lets you do is you get to double up on spin triggers. So you proc a spin trigger, bounce a character back to your opponent's hand that's giving you an issue, or just, get their buffers off the field, because you can just bounce their back row and make their characters weaker depending on what they have going on. But be warned, Hex, if they have the effects that say they can't be targeted or chosen by the opponent's card effects, the spin triggers are null and void. It doesn't matter. But that means this gets to, you get to top check, and no matter what that card is, it can go underneath this as a marker. And then you can send that marker the next turn in case you don't think you're going to proc a spin trigger and bounce a opponent's character anyway. So you kind of get a 2-for-1 deal on the spin triggers. It's just kind of neat that way. But of course, it doesn't say if it's a Fluctlight, put it underneath this as a marker. It's any card. So if you do reveal another Climax off of this, it goes underneath it as well. But either way, being able to just constantly get rid of your opponent's annoying cards can be beneficial in the long run. Just don't be bouncing back like early play healers or anything, because you don't want your opponent to be able to double up on that. 2 copies of this Time to Part Alice. It's a 0/0 If there's a marker underneath this, she gains 2k power, making her a 4k beat stick. And her marker condition is really easy. On play, top check, look at the top card of your deck. If it is a Fluctlight, you may put it face down underneath this card as a marker. Luckily, that doesn't add like, you know, climaxes or anything under it like the other one does. This one is from the Anniversary set, but it doesn't work solely off of Anniversary trait. It's a 0/0 Longing as Manthus Alice. During your turn, it gets an extra 1000 power, making it a 25. And when this is placed on stage from your hand, you may pay the cost, which is put the top card of your stock into your clock. If you do, search your deck for one level 1 or lower character, reveal it to your opponent, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. Because it doesn't search for Anniversary and it still keeps like the Fluctlight trait and everything, obviously, you can still run this. And this honestly went down. This used to be a little bit more expensive, but it's down to like less than $2 now, which is just kind of crazy. And I'm very glad that I was able to pick up a playset of this and be able to shove it into the deck, because it increases the consistency a lot. 9 times out of 10, you are going to be grabbing where the soul is. Like, just straight up, this is going to be the card that you grab. You can grab this, this level 1 Alice if you think you need it to get over cards, or you can also grab one of your other combo pieces down here. We're going to talk about the other combo piece in a second. But because this is less than $2 now, I feel 4 copies is mandatory. And you can shove this in any SAO deck in general, but this is just really good. And then we have 2 copies of Sore Loser Alice. It's a 0/0 When this card is placed on stage from your hand, reveal the top card of your deck. If that card is a Fluctlight character, put it into your hand and then discard 1 card. Some good hand filtering. And then when the damage dealt by this card is canceled, you may put this card into your stock. It doesn't always come up, but it's a neat little extra thing. The big thing you're going to do is using that for the top checking and hand filtering to try to dig more for your Brainstormer here. Is this 0/0 Charming Figure Alice. First off, if you have this other level 0 Alice on the field, this gets the effect that it gives another global 500 to all of your characters, or to all of your Fluctlight characters, but it doesn't matter. So with those 2 on the field, it's basically a global 1000 just constantly, which is really nice. It's a Brainstorm. Pay 1, tap 2, flip 5, mill 5 cards. For every spin trigger, you get to salvage back a character from your waiting room, which is really cool because you're milling 5, so there's better chances of having cards that you want. There's lots of play sets of cards in this deck, so you can get that fairly easily. And one cool thing that you can do if you have extra copies of this in hand or the one that filters is you can top check, and it lets you dig a little bit further to see if you would hit a climax or not. A lot of times, if you do one of these effects and you see that it's a spin trigger, you can kind of set up your plays accordingly. Like if you know you want to be able to swing with the character and bounce one of your opponent's characters back to hand, you can do that. Or you can go ahead and Brainstorm. You know that you're going to be able to hit stuff and then be able to salvage back what you need. Because this is basically the dedicated back row lineup, I feel it's a mandatory 4 of in the deck, because you don't want to rely on the damage searching effect of this particular Alice to get your back row set up. You typically want to be grabbing this Alice with it no matter what. So one of the cons of this is you don't really have another back row setup. You can do some other setups. There's a good level 3 Alice that's a good assist in the back row that you could just play over the Brainstormer with. But that one, I think, was floating around like $8 a piece. I could be wrong on that at the time of recording this, by the way. But I figured just, drop 4 and 4 and you should be able to get it consistently, and it doesn't matter. The other big issue with this deck, and this is probably the only other con, because you got a good bit of damage coming out. You get to dig for your climax combos fairly consistently, and your characters can get big The level 1 Alice doesn't have to reverse. You produce extra stock, so you can just pay the stock to save her to use her again. Now, the only thing is there is no healer in this deck. The level 3 that we mentioned before from Volume 1 is the only Alice that heals between Volume 1 and 2. There's another Alice in the Anniversary set. It's a Alice in Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically a back row assist. But you have to sack an Anniversary character for it. So you don't want to have to rely on having the Anniversary trait, say, off of this level 0, or off of another copy of it, or anything of that nature. So you don't want to rely on that as a healing option. So that's like the only 2 heals for Alice in general. So so you don't get heals, but you get a lot of other good cards in terms of like burn effects, damage, being able to dig for the cards that you need. And you can set up some very nice boards to push for some damage. So I do very much like this deck. It's got its little inconsistencies here and there, but I figured, a little bit of a change up from the typical Alice shenanigans. I will say, though, the level 3 from Volume 1 is by far the better Climax combo, but it's also by far the more expensive one. But it's like $22, and this is like $1, if that. Probably $2 at the time of the recording of this. But with that, and obviously, like I said before, 4 copies of Our Memories are here, and 4 copies of New World. So 8 spin triggers, got a lot of stuff, a lot of synergy with the spin triggers. Even the level 1 combo, even though it doesn't straight up say that it like can have some synergy with the spin triggers, you can play it in such a way that it does, which is really nice. So with that, thank y'all very much for watching. It was greatly appreciated. Please like and subscribe if you want. If not, hey, thanks for stopping to check it out. And we will see y'all on the flip side. Peace out for now.